Okay, so brief introduction, kind of what's different. So this is the entire warrant. Again, the warrant ends up becoming the ballot. This is what residents vote on. We have every single one of these warrant articles and details for most of them available at www.barrington.nh.gov/2023 warrant. Again, the reason we're having the little introduction here is because we're going to do things a little bit different based on feedback from residents and the budget committee as it relates to most of the warrant articles, the capital reserve contributions. And so we talk about fund balance every year. We're going to talk about it a little bit different this time. But when, our job, my job, the select board's job in good government, one measure of that is financial stability. And so we dedicate a lot of energy and effort to try to make sure we're doing right by taxpayers by maintaining financial stability. Part of that is a stable municipal tax rate, which we've done now for over 11 years. The unassigned fund balance is another big piece of that. This is cash flow. This is an emergency fund that in cases of severe emergency. And the DRA, Department of Revenue Administration, recommends holding 8 to 17%. And that's percent of the regular general fund operating expenditures. Barrington has a policy that we will maintain 12.5%, the midpoint of that range. So right now we have about 12.2%, which is where we typically are, right? Plus or minus 12.5%. And that's good. We're financially stable. So fund balance in Barrington has traditionally been used for capital projects. It's a responsible investment in capital projects while reducing the tax impact. And because the fund balance is the funding source. It is made up of, fund balance is made up of unexpended appropriations, which are taxes that have been raised, and revenue in excess of projections. And it's a savings account, like I said, that maintains cash flow and for use in case of emergency. Keep in mind, to use it in case of emergency, you need the approval of the commissioner of the Department of Revenue Administration. It isn't just the board votes that it's an emergency and, we're going to use that to buy a police. So historically, Barrington has used fund balance anywhere from a couple $100,000 to over $1 million to fund these capital projects. And it's important to keep in mind that the select board doesn't get to decide to use it. It goes to voters on a warrant article, and the voters approve or disapprove that with the funding source indicated. This is that data on a kind of complicated chart, I guess, but the green line shows how much has been spent by voters at town meeting every year. The mustard line there, or the mustard bars there, are how much in dollar value the town has held in unassigned fund balance. And then that orange reddish line shows what percentage we've maintained. So you can see there's a lot of consistency there. And again, if our goal is financial stability, that's what we look for. So let's talk about where we are for 2023. So currently we're about 12.2%. By the time of tax rate setting in October of 2023, I expect we'll be at about 14.5%. So that's $688,000 above the 12.5% target. And so the select board at that time will have approximately $700,000 to directly offset the tax rate in 2023. And I'll touch on direct and indirect use of the fund balance. What Barrington has always done has been a more indirect offsetting of the tax rate. We fund warrant articles from unassigned fund balance so that when the appropriation is made, it has that the funding source in place. It doesn't go to the tax rate and then is bought down. We utilize the fund balance as a funding source. That approach helps achieve voter support for smart financial planning to set money aside for fire trucks or highway equipment, et cetera. The direct approach would be to wait until tax rate setting and then use any portion of unassigned fund balance at the time the tax rate is set to offset the tax rate and buy it down. And that's what the select board, on the advice of residents and the budget committee, that's the approach that the town is taking this year. And so unassigned fund balance will be used to buy down the tax rate at tax rate setting. And it's the cautionary tale, and it's something that happens in municipalities all the time, is if it's not managed properly, it can introduce instability. Because if you say, I'm gonna spend $1 million to buy down the tax rate this year, and then next year you don't have that $1 million, all of a sudden you've got to make up that $1 million and whatever your increases are the next year, and that's how you get a tax rate that goes like this. It's not good for escrow accounts, it's not good for financial stability, and the longevity of the town. So it's estimated, again, about $700,000 will be available in October. So how I see this happening is voters are going to look at all the warrant articles, they're going to see the tax rate impact. And what the budget committee advocated for is seeing that tax rate impact on the warrant article is more transparent, because it gives them the ability to see in real dollars what that warrant article costs. Whether their tax rate is actually going to go up or not is not what's important, but the fact that they see that. And so then warrant articles will pass, some may fail, and then in October, the select board will revisit this fund balance amount, and the select board will say, okay, we have $700,000 above the 12.5% midpoint. We're going to use that to buy down the tax rate. And then instead of the tax rate going up 75 cents, it goes up 12 cents. And because the fund balance was used to offset those appropriations. So instead of doing it on the warrant article, we're doing it later. Same impact, but the point is that it's a more transparent process for voters. And so we've all agreed to try that this year. So let's talk about those warrant articles. So we have warrant articles that come up every year. These are reoccurring warrant articles: the bridge and culvert capital reserve, highway heavy equipment, fire truck, fire rescue equipment, dam repair, police equipment. The paving article, like I said, that $100,000, emergency communications, the transfer station recycling center, library and community center, library technology capital reserve. So those are the ones we're familiar with. New articles that have a financial component, I should say. First, the energy capital reserve. So the select board established an energy committee. One of the big goals of the energy committee was to make the town of Barrington more efficient, save us money on our energy costs, and also educate voters how they can also save money. So they've asked to establish a capital reserve, and they intend to use this money to perform energy audits of municipal facilities in order to make recommendations on how we can save money and become more efficient and save us money, essentially. And the second article is the police collective bargaining agreement. So again, we talked about implementing the wage study. The select board extended an offer to the police union to open up negotiations so that they could be offered the recommendations of the wage study. That contract process was very smooth, but because they're a union, the police collective bargaining is a separate warrant article, and this appropriates the funds to fund the increases in the police department, which will help ensure recruitment and retention in that department. So in total, if every single warrant article passed, it's $1,053,542 of warrant article appropriations. And so if we circle back to that 688,000, which that's a very conservative number. I don't expect it to be less than that, and it's likely that it will be more than that. But conservatively, that leaves $364,000, which would be on the tax rate, which represents 26 cents or $83 on a $325,000 property. So that's what's different. The last point that I'll make is that the budget committee presented the warrant articles, capital reserve requests, to the select board in the priority order that they identified. So historically, we've presented warrant articles to voters in descending order of dollar amount. This year, they're presented in priority order. So the earlier articles on the warrant for the capital reserves are the warrant articles the budget committee recommended as a higher priority. The select board didn't change that back in December. You could change that now, but that's an important component about taking this approach, different than how we've done it in the past, is it's possible that as residents get down farther in the warrant and they're voting yes, it's possible that they see tax impacts on articles and are more likely to vote no later on. Whether that happens or not, I really don't know. But that has been brought up, and for that reason, they're listed in priority order.